2026 meeting. Please silence your cell phones, pagers, and other electronic communication devices. Agendas and speaker request forms are located at the back of the chambers. We're just missing Gary today, so note that. I think he's coming in later. 10 o'clock. Yeah, 10 o'clock. So we'll have a moment of silence. Lead us in a moment of silence and prayer, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. So we'll just take a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And so we'll look for procedural motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Hacktock, seconded by Durr. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. I don't see any speaker request forms, so I'm going to close public comment, and then we'll move on to item 6, to the provisional budget. The board is being asked to consider approval of the 2027 provisional budget per SDCL 721.5. The board must, between the 15th and 13th days of July in each year, make and prepare and file in the Office of County Auditor provisional budget for the fiscal year. As a note, network issues to the city and the county have limited staff's ability to prepare budget figures. I know everybody is scrambling on this, from the employees to the department heads and to everybody, us included. Statutory requirement public hearing for final adoption of the budget will be September 1. So September 1, we have to have our budget in place. Additional meetings for consideration of any and all budget items may be scheduled before September 1st if desired, but must be explicitly designated in the minutes by the motion. Current staffing records show 92 vacant positions across the county, including 78 full-time and 14 part-time positions. The county's authorized workforce consists of 870 positions during 2026. The average number of employees paid each pay period has been 777, reflecting an average staffing level of approximately 89% of authorized positions. That's saying about roughly 90% of our positions are staffed. So today our primary mission would be to pass a provisional budget and then allow for us time to make the final presentation of the budget. So, but Kenner, are you prepared to move forward with this presentation?
Yep, a little bit. A lot of this information is going to be what was presented on the last meeting. To clarify on some of the staffing levels, I did get some updated figures later in the day yesterday, and I did not get it to reflect on here, so I'll get those updated and get those over to you guys. There's not as many open positions as there were on the snapshot on June 1st. But otherwise, yeah, with this, some of the new stuff that was entered, the outside agency presentation, we uploaded a salaries by department to show where they're at the 6-month mark, and it looks like just about everybody is right at that 50% mark, right where they should be to make the trend. Yeah, other than that, a lot of the information is kind of the same. And as a note, kind of what you read before, the provisional budget does have to be approved by tomorrow. And today is the last meeting for that, so we will have to approve the provisional today.
Okay, so I guess what we can do is go through each one of these little documents and see if the commission has anything they want to visit about on these items.
Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Haddock, you have the floor.
So if we could, Karen handed out a paper, and then the departments have it now. I went through this with Kendra the other day, and it kind of shows everything that's on this paper for our provisional budget. Some of it you won't have all the numbers, but to explain like the total cash applied balance for the general fund 4964451, what that shortfall was like 3 million. What do we have, Kendra? 3,370,120. So I wasn't getting. If you look on that first paper, and why I'm talking about this is because is it a shortfall of 3,37120? If you look at the top number, you go down to anticipated cash balance. Let's go to road and bridge, 14 million. And then if you see on the top where cash is applied, 1716108, brings him down to 12,366,893. He's not at a shortfall, even though we have to report how much he's going to be using as his reserve. And if I explain this wrong, Ken, interrupt me. So then the bottom line is 12,366,893. It's not a shortfall. He has it in his reserve. So anything in parentheses, which I know cumulative building isn't restricted, but if you look where they're taking some of that, or they're not taking that, the 20,000 in Title III, the parentheses for E911, that is actually, a lot of those are reserves. So they aren't shortfalls, even though they have to be reported, even if they're using, if I'm correct, Kenner, even if they're using that, they still have to be reported, even if they have it in their budgets. So what I asked him was, so the shortfall until we have the bottom line numbers is the 4964451 until we take away and reduce, because if we take the 4% from wages, reduction in wages, it depends if we take CPI and growth or if we take CPI growth, and what Kenner has in there is when he came up with the number 4529314, he took taxable growth, available CPI, and bank CPI to get that 45. If you looked on your paper, where he came up with 4529314. So what I asked Kenner is, and this is how it's easier for a budget, what are we reducing, or what are we making the motions on to reduce? Are we reducing some of the unmandated? Are we reducing the 4%? Are we taking CPI and growth? Are we taking CPI and banked growth? Because you can't really do a budget. You can't figure out a budget until you make the motions in order for those guys to run the numbers where we're going, if I'm correct, Chair. So, for me, I think the 4594 is the shortfall. You do, and like I said, you have the money in reserves for these other ones. They have the money. You don't have to come up with the money, but it still has to be reported as they're using that money in their budgets in order to, basically those reserves in order to make their budgets even if they have it. Does that make sense? Like we don't have 4,964,45 until we don't have we took it away from the 27,465, which reduced the estimated cash balance to 22,500 if you see your numbers. But we need to, and that's at 26%, but we're not done with anything we add for wages. You already know with that we want to do the for the departments, the 2.5 COLA, the 1.5 step. So for me, when you're doing a budget, these are a lot of things in here, but your bottom line is where are you getting money? Where are you taking the money from? Your bottom line, what's your cash reserves once you take away the expenditures and reserves? Because you start at 85,684,020. If you look at your total appropriations, it's in the first line. But then if you look way to the right in the bottom line, you're at reserves of, and it says 80,991,640. So we had to make up 5,000. Now, and then Ken was trying to explain some of the other stuff, so I'm not getting the shortfall until we make a real budget, meaning when we have our expenditures that we want to spend stuff on, and where we want to keep the reserves, where we're getting the money from, where's the bottom line? Does that make sense to everybody? When you look at these numbers? Or am I missing something? Because the main thing with cash applied, how much cash applied do we want? That's your bottom line. We usually, I remember Gary saying 20%. I don't know what that cash applied needs to be. And some of the areas where we're putting and not letting people put in that unrestricted, I think that could be a problem depending on how much unrestricted, in the long run, we're gonna take out of budget in the end. And are we gonna know that unless, like, Audra comes up and says, in 26, I have a $334,000, remember I told you guys about my computer systems, we're gonna take that out of reserves, and we're gonna, then Annette's gonna come up with 200,000, and that's 500 something we're gonna take out of reserves, instead of budgeting each year for her to take out 20,000, 30,000, I guess I really didn't get, I don't want unrestricted to be a game play and make it look like we can't use it in one sense if we have emergency, and they'll understand that, but I also wanna be able to, like in my budget, be able to put some money in something, to be able to, pay for something for the future instead of just dump out one big total, so, maybe someone can explain that and why you keep doing that, and some of the stuff that we changed last year, I appreciate what we did, but if you take that down, we're at like 130,000 or something right now, and then we're talking about cutting FTEs and some other stuff. What we looking at for our reserves this year? I mean, are you guys understanding? You're looking at your spreadsheet where I'm talking about?
I'm trying to figure this spreadsheet out. I just got this thing, so.
Yeah, but you'll look at the top, Jerry, at the 4694, that's the general fund. That's where we're short.
What page are you on? I don't.
This one, just this one.
I don't think I've got that one.
So,
Karen, they didn't get this one?
The numbers you're giving us are different than what's on here.
It's on the third page of the packet at the very bottom.
Can you put that on the screen so everybody can see it?
They have papers that they handed out. Get the 491, way at the top, pin at the 49, where the general fund, total cash balance applied. They need 5 million supposedly to bring it down to that. Now you see where I'm talking about? And then anything you see across, go ahead, Ken.
So this is the report, the appendix D1 and D2. This is what we provide to the state. So this is the reporting page that Deb and I went over a little bit yesterday. So this is going to show on this line here, on the total cash applied, this is by fund. So in the general fund, right now our expenditures are exceeding our revenues by 4.9 million, 4.964 million. If you go to the road and bridge, from the revenues coming in, it's 1.7 million. And usually with these other funds like the 201, Joe will probably be able to speak to this very well, but this is because they have projects coming in. So the money that they have in the bank, this is just the way that we report it, that this is the money that we're taking basically out of our bank account to make the 201 fund balance. And that's where it's going to show down here on how much he has $14 million in the bank for the 201 fund. So then it's going to drop it down to 12.366 anticipated by the end of the year in 27. So the number that we really need to look at in our general fund, right now we're sitting at 26.26% left in the reserve or in the fund balance, general fund. And the goal, I think, is 20 to 25% is what was stated in years past on the goal.
What was that number? 20 what?
We're at 26.26.
And what was the number that you said we were trying to do?
20 to 25%.
Okay, so we're basically 6% over, and that's after you apply 4.9 million.
Yep, and this is not going to account for anything with, if we take growth, if we take CPI, any other changes in personnel, if we do the COLA step increases. So all of this is very preliminary and subject to change.
So basically what happens, Ken, when you, we basically have a surplus of over the top of what our reserve is expected to be, or what we expect it to be.
Yes, but our budget right now is, it's not a balanced budget.
Right.
And so I think that's where we're off by, in the general fund, 4.9 million.
Right.
For the total fund, it is 8, total cash applied that we're doing is 8.3 million.
Okay. And so what does that bring it down to in the end, the whole overall reserve?
Let me pull it up. I think it was around 92 million. total in the bank after.
But percentage wise, is that where we wanna be, or is that too low, or? I think what Commissioner Hadcock is saying is, where do we wanna be? And so, percentage wise there, and then percentage wise, are we gonna look at the growth of the CPI, or are we, because we also have to provide for, I think we've all agreed that the COLA definitely will be factored into the budget.
Chair, can I explain something?
Go ahead.
So now that you see it, so we are short the 5 million. But if you look at the top part, we're adding the 3.370120. They have the money in their They have the money in reserves. We have to report that they're using the money because they're over.
Correct.
But if they have the money in their reserves, they're using that in a way that I'm saying that they have it in their reserves. He has road and bridge, he has projects, he has different stuff, but for all his projects, maybe Joe can explain it in a way too. He's still gonna have money in his budget. He's not having a shortfall, but they have to show that if he does all his projects and does all his personnel and does all his stuff, he is overage on his regular budget, 1716, 108. He has to dip in his reserves.
Right.
Am I correct, Joe? Maybe Joe can.
Well, that's exactly how I understand it.
So it's not a shortfall, but we're saying we have a shortfall of 8.3. That's why I wasn't getting that. I get the 5 million shortfall, but he's not short. You have to, Kenner, can you explain that? So he has to, his total budget is over what, 1716, 108. Maybe Joe, use yours as an example. Because
So we had, you guys just signed the agreement and voted on the agreement with the City of Box Elder to pay them a total of $1.25 million for taking on 1416 99 Service Road, Liberty Boulevard, and Morning View Drive. So with that, we're due to pay that in 2027. So that funding, that $1.25 million, came from our reserve fund that we've been saving up over the years. Heine started this fund back, a long time ago for.
And how much is in your reserves right now?
I believe you said $14 million, I think.
Yeah, there's
The number.
$14 million is anticipated to start in 2027.
Correct. So at the beginning of this year, I think we had a little over $13 million. And then after 26, 1.1 or 1.2 went back in there, I think, something like that. And I would like to point out, I don't know if it was voted on or not. The intention was to, I think there's 200 and some $1,000 in that 202 fund that I believe Jerry pointed out last year that would like to just kind of zero out that line item. So I think that's kind of where another portion of that reserves is coming from, not necessarily all from the 201. And there's some other projects in there that are coming out of that 201 reserve to make up that 1.7.
So with the 1.7, you have it in your reserves, but but your regular budget is gonna increase that much, so that's your shortfall, is that what you're
So
saying?
I think our revenues, so you basically take that 17.378 there at the bottom line, the total appropriations,
Right,
minus the 1.7, and that's what our normal revenue would be with wheel tax, motor V funds, all the revenue sources that we get into that 201 fund would be 17.3 minus that 1.7, correct, Ken?
Yep.
but so the 3.30 is not like, we don't have to make it up, because they have it in their reserves, is what I'm saying, but to me, it looks like we're short 8 point something. It is for the accounting purposes, but for the bottom line, we don't have to make up from road and bridge and emergency management or 911 any of that money. It makes it, I thought we're short 8.3, but we're not. We're short 5,494,000, right?
So in the general fund, yeah, it's the 4.9 million. The grand total that we're having to pay out of the bank is the 8.3. So it's still going to be paid out of the bank, even though it's a restricted fund and it can only be spent, like highway can only be spent on their certain projects. But we're still taking it out of the bank, and it's an expenditure still. So that's where it's coming from, the 8.3. So anything that they're spending over what they're receiving is going to have to come out of They're basically their fund balance
their
for the year.
reserves, so they have it, but that's what I'm saying, they have it in their shortfalls in their bank and they're using it, we don't. We need to balance our budget on that 5 million, so, again, I wouldn't say that was it's a shortfall overall of what the total is, but it's not a shortfall in our budget where we have to come up with another 3.370. Make sense? Because we have it in our reserves, in their restricted funds.
Yep, and that's kind of a board direction on what they're wanting to do, if they're wanting to have every fund balance. So like, say, last year we cut 4% out of personnel wages for the big parties, the bigger departments. That would change the 1.7 cash applied, and say it dropped it by 200,000, then it would be 1.5 cash applied. So it changes, so it depending on how much money you guys want in each fund balance and how much you want to take out of it.
But you see where I'm going, if you keep replenishing it, their reserves stay the same, and why would you keep the reserves the same? I mean, that's what it's used for. Does that make sense, Jared?
Well, yeah, but they're not replenishing it, that's the point. When your revenue is less than your expenditures, you take the money out of your reserves, but then that means your revenue is still less than your expenditures, so it doesn't increase, it decreases. And that's where we have to decide our reserve percentages, where we need them to be and where they're at, and understanding that, you know, there are particular projects that are gonna change that yearly, so. Well, if you go to the bottom, it says his reserve is 71%, which, right, Kenner?
That's high.
Oh, yeah, it would be, but I'm sure if we look at this, there's probably a reason, like a project that's coming up or whatever, or either that or we're saving too much year after year and we're charging the taxpayers too much. That's the point that makes, so.
That's what I'm saying, why would you cut when you could use it? And then, don't get me wrong, don't put your reserves so you can't take care of your department.
Correct.
But like, even with 911, he's gonna use we're gonna cut him 4%, he's just gonna.
Right. He'll use his reserves, but how long will that take to get below the threshold where we want it to be?
How long
So
has
that's what we have to decide as collectively as a commission, is to say, where do we want these reserves to be sufficient? And that's why we look at balancing the budget or understanding that cash applied is going to be used because we have too much reserves, so we need it for a project.
Sorry. We also have to trust that when they have their reserves, that they know where the reserves should be when they're using it or putting that 1.7 over. He has enough in his reserve to cover whatever he's doing. Same with Kevin or anybody else on the restricted, that they know that, you know, they can't have a shortfall because they can't get it from us. So we gotta also trust that they know on the reserves where they should be. We're not banking them. If we take 4% from their accounts and then basically you're just gonna flip. So, on the restricted. So they're gonna need the reserve. So, again, I don't think that the 3.3 is significant to add to our deficit. I think we need to make sure we get the 5.
Well, this presents an overall picture for the entire county too, to say,
Yes, sir.
is it important to take a CPI when we have reserves that are way above where we want to be? And so if you do that and you don't take that, then you have to look at next year and go, okay, where are we going to be next year? Is that going to cause a problem because we're going to raise wages or COLA, or we have projects that are out there? Yeah. So overall, you have to weigh those all into the equation. Makes complete sense to me. So, how about everybody else? Any more questions or direction here? So,
So, Chair, are we giving any direction? Are we
Well,
asking for
here's-
CPI growth, or what are we doing?
yeah, we ran into a couple problems with obviously with our cyber incidents that we're experiencing, and then our commission manager, which has a lot of the numbers, is violently ill today and yesterday. So what I'm looking for in the end result is to do what you guys want to do on anything that you want to take care of today. We take care of it, we pass this provisional budget, and then we have basically August, right? All of August to make more changes, correct?
Yeah,
Well,
that has to be, the final budget has to be approved by the end of September.
by the end of September, we got 2 months. But the one point is giving direction to our department heads if we see something that we need to address or something we want to visit about. And then today, I think we especially set aside today maybe for outside agencies. Is that correct, Kenner? So.
Yep, there's an outside agency presentation that we can talk about. And it's just going to show kind of what's mandated, non-mandated, and the amount that we paid last year versus what they're requesting.
I think that everybody has that on their mind, but.
Here.
Go ahead.
Wait. So the TIF money, we have interest, we don't know how much what that's gonna be. Where are we putting the 5.4? These are questions not to be answered today, but there's something that we need to take a look at. The 5.4, where's that going? Does it have to go back legally into bonding? I had Kenner look that up, or maybe it was Jordan, because I talked to both these guys. Cutting some unmandated, are we taking CPI growth? Are we taking the bank with it? Because it's like 4 point something or 5 million, 4.9. If you take CPI growth, if you're taking it with the bank, it's about 4% reduction in wages is about 2.577. I mean, why I'm saying that is you want to give these guys some numbers to work with and make some motions so we get some stuff done. FTE cuts, or we want to cut any FTEs today? Where do you want to cut? Outside agencies? Give these guys some numbers to play with, so bottom line, it also gives the staff a direction of kind of where we're going and where that balance and reduction needs to be. So to wait till the last minute or wait till later, some of it might need more discussion, I get, but some of it is just bottom line. You want them to run some numbers and some real numbers, you gotta make some real decisions. Do you wanna add the 2.5 COLA with the 1.54, that total 2.5, that's the 2.557 by the way. Anyway, it's nice, I don't know if you guys personally, to see those numbers, see on that sheet how it affects it. It was a lot easier to see once Kenner gave me that sheet. And then have the staff defend or not defend or to say this is a great idea of where we're going, because they're part of the equation, whether we do the budget, and we're supposed to do the budget anyway. They kind of want to know where we're going as well, so they can look at their budgets and maybe, you know, there needs to be more cuts, or maybe those FTEs, or that's a huge discussion. So my bottom line is the communication between the two in order to come up with a balanced budget, or at this point, if you take the 5, you take it into about 130, depending on where you put those other numbers. So I'm ready to listen to people's discussion, where they want to start some cutting or adding, or what those numbers are.
I guess if we have a documentation for open positions by department, we did a little bit of an update on that, right, Kenner? So.
Yep, and that one, again, that's one that I did get information after the fact, and there was quite a few positions that were filled from when this came out. This was a snapshot of June 1st. The departments that I did hear back from, I did get those ones updated, but I have the law enforcement one here that I did not get a chance to update on the presentation yet.
Do we not give direction on that?
Why don't we have that?
Okay. Or is that something that Jordan has?
Yep, and so we can dumpster dive a little bit deeper in here. I know I did talk to HR department a while ago to try to figure out how long the position has been opened, stuff like that. We haven't officially found an answer for that one, but we can do some digging too, because there's a lot, I mean, just what we're paying, we're at 777 employees being paid, and that's counting all commissioners, planning commission, anyone that's paid through a payroll system, on average throughout the whole year for every payroll. But we have 870 positions total, or people headcount total. And so there is going to be some room where there's going to be positions that have not been filled for over a year or for 6 months. If we get access back to our other files, I'd have the history on a lot more on the positions, but this was kind of put together last week, end of last week.
So that's hard to really judge, but I would think that having 100 open jobs for 6 months or a year probably is not necessary. I'll be looking for.
Here.
Yes. Yes, Commissioner.
Just a question. So some people like, sorry, Alex, I'm gonna use you as an example. So, Alex didn't fill his position. He took Barry's and he didn't fill his position right now because he had to, with, Barry's retirement. He, at this time, didn't wanna increase the budget. So he didn't do it for 6 months to whatever, he's waiting for 27 to fill that position, not because he doesn't need it, it's because he wants to try to keep that budget balance. So some of it, just cutting it because they haven't used it for 6 months or something. I can see if they haven't used it year after year, you know, that's just, doesn't need it, but some of them, I'd like to know before we cut them, but the explanation for the 6 months.
I think we're just looking to give people direction, it's kind of
Yeah,
what we're
but
thinking. So.
you know what I'm saying?
Yep, absolutely.
But I would like to know that year after year, I get the cutting, because I think we have a lot of positions, so I'm not against that.
So then it takes us down to like salaries by department budget. So. We have comments on that, commissioners?
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Commissioner.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make a couple comments overall. So last year we, cut, like Kenner mentioned, we cut those, bigger departments 4% and personnel. And anyway, through June 30th anyway, overall countywide, we're 50% through the year. We're running about 47.3% on our personnel expenditures. So it was a question as to whether or not the departments, how would they manage, by cutting that 4%. Anyway, overall, everybody's pretty much on target. You'll see some of when you go into the personnel line items, we're running hot on overtime in some of those departments. And then again, you could look at some of the departments that have unfilled positions, and you'll see that they're running hot on overtime, and that's probably an explanation as to why. And then if you go back to historically, which is something we worked on, last year, and we're trying to get to this year, is the number of positions that the county has actually budgeted. And so then getting down to department based on position, what the FTE counts are by position, and say we're going to fund a certain amount. And if you take the open positions we have, and I just did, a generic number of, let's just say $25 an hour with no benefits, it's a tick over $4 million in savings is what those open positions equate to. And so, just those open positions, and that's a conservative number, just a little over $4 million. And getting back to some of those open positions, yeah, there's reasons why some of them are open, and then we do have, like in the public safety sector where they do batch hiring. And so you might budget for those positions for an entire year, but they're only going to be filled, 50% of the year, maybe in the third quarter, whatever that case may be. And look at those averages, and what I'd like to look at is to get a number on that and say, we're not going to fund 100%. You're doing batch hiring throughout the year, twice a year, look at what that historical number is, and then say fund to that level. But getting back to,
Before you move on, could I ask you one question? How many average, for the 4 million, did you have 56? Is that what you had on the average of 25 million?
I did the last number as reported by in our last cycle, which was 84. That number is now higher, but that number is also,
just making sure.
so it's off the 84.
Thank you.
Yep.
Because that's what I ran, and I got the same thing, I just didn't know where you got yours from.
Right.
Thank you.
So when it comes down to the budget in front of us today, yeah, we have a lot, to go through, but I realize, because again, what has to happen is this budget and the numbers have to be published, and I believe, Kenner, it's got to be published by the end of July.
Yep.
So we have to have this sent off to the newspapers in the format that's required by statute with all the provisional numbers and line items. And so today, I don't want to go in and say, let's increase individual line items, because of the complication that goes with that. Trying to get the accurate numbers calculated to get a provisional budget required by state law off and published and submitted. And, you know, I was just talking to the auditor's office this morning, and again, we're seeing, you know, the handicap of our network capabilities of being able to process stuff. And, but basically getting into our financial module of Tyler to go ahead and do some of this information, and it's still problematic. And so I'm not looking, for me anyway, today to go in various line items and make any changes. I would rather adopt the provisional budget as presented at 135 million and change, and then we have additional budget hearings to go through this. So.
Okay, I would agree with that, and because I think you guys are pointing out some good points with just having an overall general concept that, you know, are we looking at the CPI, are we looking at growth, are we looking at bank CPI, whatever. Looking at the reserves that we have are above where we want to be. If we put in the projections for CPI and, for the COLA and for the step increase, Ken, does that take those reserves back down, or is that?
It will a little bit, yeah, depending on what you take. If the numbers that I ran, I did the numbers that were provided in the budget memo.
Okay.
Where
How about we do this for next time? If we can get a motion here to adopt this provisional budget, and I think we have some thoughts of cutting the amount of employees that we have out there that aren't being filled, that we have some, then we also run the numbers of what it looks like with the budget having a COLA increase and a step increase, right? Then we have a better idea whether we want to take the CPI, the growth, or the bank. For me, if there's no reason to take the CPI, then I'm not interested if there's no reason to take it. I mean, if we have too many reserves already, like Commissioner Hancock pointed out earlier, then we should tap that out, because that means if our reserves are growing too fast and we are charging the taxpayers too much. But the growth is always something that is fair. I mean, that's fair. Commissioner Hancock.
That CPI is, we're talking general fund on that 5 million. We're not talking reserves from the others. So we don't have too many reserves. If you're talking general fund, you're short 5 million. If you're talking about reserves that are restricted and stuff, that's a little bit.
Yeah, that's a different.
You know what I'm saying? So it's not the same.
Yep.
The other thing is if we're cutting some unmandated, we're going to talk about it today, then it helps Kenner figure out the numbers. If we're doing a 4% reduction, I think everybody across the board and the staff pretty much knows that. Why would you let them run that numbers? If you're doing FTE cuts, that's going to be a little bit different. If you're going to do CPI and growth and you're not really ready to make that decision because you want to see the numbers first, I get it. But we keep meeting and we're not really making any progress on and giving the staff very much direction. So I think the direction for me was the 4% reduction if we're going to make that reality. Cutting some unmandated, if you want to do that today, that's pretty easy. We need to start moving forward on some of this stuff, because we say about the computer systems, I did all this just from paper. So you don't need a computer system to be able to do this. Kenner did all this, by the way, and we haven't had all our numbers. He took my paper book from 26 to do some of this, I get. But yeah, we're working on a budget, but we keep putting it off. And last year, I'll just tell you, we did some really good stuff, or I should say made good motions with Kenner and Jordan's help. But the bottom line is, it's nice for the staff and us this year, now that we got it kind of handled, we're doing the budget the same, to start doing what we need to do to get this budget in place. So
you talked about a 4% decrease in what?
Wages.
So, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Dirk.
So I think it's okay for me anyway to talk about, saying, yes, I think we need to look at a 4%, same as we did. We need to get a handle on the FTEs. But what I don't want to do today, because we have to come up with a number today, and say, Kenner on the fly, go calculate all these numbers, and he's not going to be able to do that to give us a number today that we can vote on. And so I think it's okay to say, yes, we're looking at a 4% cut. I mentioned at the last meeting that I was looking at the, CPI, the COLA, and a step increase for the employees, and those numbers are in here in budget memo from Jordan about what those additional things will cost. But I don't want to go in on the fly right now and say change a bunch of numbers and get us that number because we have to approve that today. He's not going to be able to go in there and change all of these numbers, calculate all this stuff today and say, yes, here's a provisional budget and then go ahead and make sure that that's the right number that's published, because what we're pushing for is an error in our provisional budget.
I agree.
Commissioner Rossman, so I guess everybody's agreeing that we can look at, if we can give some direction to our staff that we're looking at a 4% wage cut,
So,
payroll cut, not a wage cut, but a overall payroll cut.
but here, I never said we switched the numbers today. We never switched, when we did our budgets before, if you remember Gary and Ron, we didn't switch our numbers right there. What we did is gave direction of where we're going. I told Kenner, I think today we can at least give you some direction of where we're going. Are we going in the 4% reduction? Are we looking at CPI growth? You're not gonna come with those numbers. What he's gonna do is start adding those with his totals instead of saying, okay, this is what we're putting in our provisional. No, we're gonna approve, it sounds like, our provisional budget, but we're gonna give Kenner and Jordan some direction that we like to see cutting some of the unmandated. That's how we did it before. You start putting in those numbers, I'm sorry, but it ain't that hard. I did it on paper. CPI, the growth, the 4%, the cutting of the FTEs, and we're gonna talk about outside agencies. If we're gonna start talking about, these things can be talked about during the provisional. It doesn't have to be changed during provisional, but at least Kenner and Jordan have some direction of where we think we're going today. That's all I was
That's
asking.
what I'm doing right now by asking that we're all agreeing, we all agree that we're gonna look at a 4% reduction in payroll. But we don't know whether we need the CPI, the growth, or the bank CPI. So we gave some direction there. And then we do probably need to talk about the mandates and the non-mandates. So Kenner, do you get that direction that that's where we're heading? You wanna see what that looks like? Okay.
So, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah. So on what's in the provisional budget right now, I believe, for the outside agencies is what was approved in 2026. And so I would just like to leave that number in there and then we go on. But we did get additional budget requests that are not in there. So we got Prairie Hills Transit. I don't want to take on any new outside agencies that we had not previously funded. That's my position. So we had outside agencies that presented this year that have never gotten funding from us before, at least not in this fiscal year. And I don't want to increase those outside entities coming in.
Do we have any other requests besides this Prairie River Transit or West River Transit?
The other one is the DHS long-term service.
So South Dakota Department of Health is asking for funding.
But they're not in the provisional budget now. So,
Pardon?
I mean, this gives everybody a heads up, they're not in the provisional budget right now. So if we approve the provisional budget right now, these are out. The one thing, last year we got pretty well beat up by the library because we didn't give them a heads up. And so where are we at for the library?
In the provisional budget, we just carried it over. And what was carried over was what was approved, not what was added after the fact.
Right.
So right now in the budget, it is at 81,000.
Okay.
For provisional. Last year, I think we ended up paying out 320,000.
I'm no interest in going back there, I think 81's good. So, I don't know if anybody else, Commissioner Hancock.
So are we distributing the 81 between 3 of them, 4 of them, or how are we distributing the 81?
No.
The 81's going right to the Rapid City. So if we want to redistribute, what is our total levy, like 140?
142-ish.
I thought he said 192 the other day.
No. It's 143 in that neighborhood.
Okay, so we went.
If we could, I just want to make sure that the Rapid City Library has some sort of a idea where we're ending up.
So relative to the Rapid City Library, I think what they're asking for would cover their cost to provide services to county residents that currently use the library. And I don't have all the numbers right now, but if we it's too large of a shortfall to be right back in the situation we had last year. And they're gonna tell county residents is that when you come into the library, you're gonna pay because we were underfunded by the county. I just don't wanna make that mistake again this year.
Yeah,
I don't know what that magic number is, and it'd be nice if somebody from the library is here, but I really want us to think before we, put some firm numbers to the Rapid City Library.
Right, I just wanted to give them a heads up where we're heading. Because we also have, we have Hill City Library that we fund, and then we do, like, for a certain amount of money, and then we do,
Keystone and Wall.
Keystone Wall, and Box Elder has no interest in being levied. So we only have $141,000 to work with, that's what we levied.
Yeah, we do the levy, and we talked about.
$141,000, so that's where our levy collections are, so.
So you're 143 taking away the 81, what's that, Peter?
62.
I don't have my calculator with me.
62.
So you have 62 to distribute to the other three, am I correct?
Yes.
So they aren't gonna be the totals. What do the other three totals add up to, Wall, Keystone, and Hill City?
It would be what would be approved for the 63 from 2026, the 11,277. Wall was 19,826, and Hill City 33,430.
13.
Mr. Chair.
So you need 63, and you only have 62, so one person gets less than 1,000.
Commissioner Ross,
It seems to me part of the problem is the current levy that we have for the libraries, and there's been discussion to just eliminate that and then let the libraries come up and based on what they can provide in services, that would be the amount that we would allocate to them. Or adjust that levy. Obviously that levy that we have right now will not support the libraries. Rapid City, it might help Keystone, Wall, and Hill City, but the white elephant in the room is Rapid City Library. And with this current levy, it just will not do it.
I don't think you'll.
So we're not making motions on the.
No, I just wanted to give them a heads up that there's gonna be some changes, so we need to have those discussions, but, I mean, I'm looking for a motion to approve the provisional budget, because I don't see us getting anywhere else other than that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve the provisional budget as submitted, and the total appropriations would be $135,574,226.
Sorry. I have a motion from Durr, second from Drews, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And
Opposed,
Mr.
same sign. Motion carries. So the
Mr.
provisional budget is just a place for us to start that has to get approved to the state and allows us a place to start, but we have a lot of homework to do, so we're gonna have to set up some special meetings to actually, but I would say some of the direction that we're getting here is a 4% cut in total wages across the county here. And how we get that is by the department heads figuring out how they want to approach that and bringing it back to us.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner.
And then, relative to outside agencies, the Prairie Hills Transit and the South Dakota Department of Health, basically that's just as part of the Pennington County Council of Aging, which I've been on for 7 years. And, you know, if we're not gonna support that, then let's just dissolve Pennington County Council of Aging, because it's just a waste of people's time. These folks come to us in good faith. They've been around for 10, 12, or that agency or the committee's been around for a number of years, and, you know, it's just volunteers that come, and we're trying to address the needs of the seniors in Pennington County. And if we can't support the transit, we can't support that other request, I don't know why we're still meeting and beating our heads together. If that's the route we're gonna do, then let's just dissolve Pennington County Council of Aging, and we'll go another route to address the needs of the seniors in Pennington County.
I agree. Is that something we have to do formally, or do they do that themselves?
I don't know, but I think we need to look at it.
Okay, if we need to do that formally, I think that we can get some help from Tyler.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner.
I have another motion. Kenner, what's the second meeting in August?
the 18th.
I'm gonna make a motion because we need to set another hearing date for provisional budget discussion, for 2027, and I'm gonna set that date for, August 14th, is that the date? 18th.
So you need to set it on the 18th?
Yes.
Or?
Just so we have it published that it's a hearing, and so that was the secondary motion recommended in here.
I still think that,
Chair,
yes, Commissioner, back up.
I think you need some more special meetings before the 18th, because we have to approve it in September. We can't just, if we're gonna have more special meetings before then, I'm okay, but if you're just gonna start talking about it on the 18th, that's a little late in the equation, especially if you have to do it by September 29th. I'll be gone the last week, so I'll be at the last meeting, but, yeah, I'm not interested in waiting until September 29th to do a provision, to get the second budget done. I think when you're trying to do a department head or otherwise, doing another meeting August 18th, unless, like I said, we're having some special meetings, because you're also putting a lot of stress on these guys trying to find numbers and crunch those numbers that fast as well, but I'm saying the 18th is too far away.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, we can set additional meeting dates, but, next week is the 4th, and we already have an agenda that's gotta be published by the end of this week, so.
We have our first meeting on the 4th.
But just special meetings in between.
We can set special meetings, but, and again, we can have special meetings and set that, but I'm just trying to pick a date that we can get in the paper.
So actually on the 4th, we could set another meeting if we wanted to, or set meetings after the 18th. That's 3 weeks at the most, right?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner.
Yeah, got a second for that. I'll second that motion by Commissioner Durr.
So we have a motion and a second for a provisional meeting on the 18th of August. And, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. So, but we do need to keep pounding away at some directions. Hopefully we can get through some of our cyber incident things and move on.
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
going back to those discussions, getting back to the number of FTEs, and Kenner said this morning he got some updated numbers yesterday, but I would ask the departments that have those kind of continued open FTEs to work with the HR office and the commission office and try to come up with some of those numbers as to, how often those have been open and why, and have an explanation as if you've had a position, and I don't know, if you've had a position sitting there, for, 2 budget cycles that's not been filled, is that something you need in that job title? Is it a different job that you need, and you're gonna come back and say, I don't need that job title anymore because my office has changed, but what I do need is this other job title. Because what I would like to do when we approve our final budget and we set those number of FTEs and positions, that's, statutorily, that's what we do, but I would like to have the numbers so that the HR office, when somebody comes forward and says, I need, I need another deputy auditor, and then they can look in the system and say, you're not funded for that position, you were allocated 6 positions, you've hit that level, you're gonna have to go back in front of the commission for that 7th position. So I think it would help if everybody could go back and look at those, and, I see our state's attorney here. And I know that, again, some of that is going to be on a cycle when you can get those individuals into the office based on that. I know the sheriff is here, and I know that, in some departments that they try to do, batch hiring for recruiting and training, and it's a cost savings to get a group of people on board when you have to go through that in processing and training process versus one at a time. So, but at least to try to get a handle on that, because it would help us to know what that number is. So when we're looking at that cash applied, knowing that we can get to a number that says, yes, we have the money to go ahead and fund a cost of living. Yes, we have the money to go ahead and fund step increases. And we'll have a later presentation, before final budget on our self-insurance fund and our health plans, and saying that, do we want to push off an increase of 6% to the employees, and it's going to cost X amount of dollars, if we have the money, is that something the county could inject into the self-insurance fund to lessen that burden to the employees? So anyway, those are some areas I think departments can help.
Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Hancock, you have the floor.
Also, as I was at a department head meeting, they're looking at the fleet, and they're having the sheriff, I don't know if you already knew that, the sheriff, the buildings and grounds, and Joe look at that fleet, so they can try to come up with a solution on that, which I think could be a reduction, a big reduction in some of that budget, which we should include, and Kenner should hopefully, and Jordan keep up to date on that. We also, I confirmed, and I know you went to the meeting with Culver said he did confirm the 800,000 that he would suck it up for 27, but they need a contract that says basically you're sucking up for 27 and 28. We come up with the money, whether it's through a funding source of general fund or it's going to be a levy, so some of that's going to save. Also, if we could figure out the real CPI, because we're guesstimating now on growth, I don't know how we get that. The bank CPI we probably already know. Those numbers would be good to know to send us. The other is TIF interest and some of that, because that adds to the total. That's not in any of this. Where we're putting the 5.4, Kenner, in bonding or back in the bonding fund, or we're putting it in general fund, or what we're doing with that, because that money from bonding was supposed to be for a jail. So when they took that money for the 5.4, I think it should go back in the bonding for the jail, because that's what it was anticipated for. So that's my opinion. But if you're just gonna balance a budget on a general fund, that's kind of doing the same thing we did before, using bonding money to balance or to make the percentages.
Commissioner Hancock, so you talking about the interest on the bond?
On the
that
TIF.
we haven't spent? Okay.
TIF.
Okay.
There's
So where is
usually
that
about a
money
million
going?
something, that usually does go into general fund, the TIF money, the interest,
Really?
yes. If I'm correct,
You're
Ken.
you're pointing out something that's important for us to know, because it's really shouldn't be. So that's something you can come to a conclusion for with us, kind of where that money's going.
Yeah.
That interest
Just
one.
some of those areas I looked at, Chair, that are concerns, and if we're doing chambers and different stuff and contracts, we're looking at contracts. If we're doing chamber of commerces and different things, are we looking at those contracts as well? Because should we be doing everybody's, if we're doing chambers, and if we're doing Elevate and all the rest, let's look at those numbers as well, Kenner. Thank you.
Continue to head down that road, consolidating all the contracts and stuff. There was something else.
Yeah.
Well, fleet management, so where are we at with that, or what direction are we giving on that?
I know Jordan talked about it in the department head meeting, I believe. I think all parties that, to my knowledge, are on board with it. But I can look into it a little bit more and get back to you on the next meeting with it.
Perfect. And then, or HR person,
Sure.
our HR director, when is our HR director starting?
August 3rd. August 3rd.
August 3rd, so just so everybody knows. Looks like the sheriff has a question or comment, so Brian, you have the floor. I'm gonna give Brian the floor, so go ahead, Brian.
Good morning, Brian Mueller, Pennington County Sheriff. Just a little update on the fleet discussion. We did discuss that at the department head meeting. Davis Purcell and Joe Miller and I met yesterday and talked through that. What we're looking at doing, Jordan says last year we discussed this at the budget hearings. Jordan was going to compile all the data of the vehicles and the vehicle maintenance budgets and replacement budgets of all the different departments in the county. He says he has that, he just doesn't have access to it right now, so we're waiting to get that information. And then we're looking at a few different things. One, we believe that we could do a consolidated fleet management software system that would greatly help across the county. And then taking a look, we discussed this last year, we believe that there would likely be, with the smaller departments that have, between 2 and 16 vehicles that are managing their own things, that we likely could add one full-time mechanic to Pennington County at a pretty huge cost savings by doing all of the routine vehicle maintenance. So we're working on, it'll probably take us a month or two to get a little bit more of the data pulled together, but we'd like to bring that back in front of the commission and talk through. We have a fleet manager at the sheriff's office. We manage over 120 vehicles. Joe has a shop manager that manages over 400 pieces of equipment. Davis Purcell has 18 vehicles, I think, equalization. might have 16 vehicles. So we have some pockets of vehicles. We think we could pull together purchasing power when it comes to vehicle maintenance and those types of things. But we'd like to bring that back to the commission, probably in pieces, and talk through how we can consolidate that down to be more under one umbrella for fleet management, even operating out of two different shops. And then if in the future we were able to consolidate into one location for a shop, there'd be further consolidation.
So right now, we're doing that down at the fairgrounds shop.
That's where part of it's done, and then obviously Joe does the work out at his, but I think Scott Guffey does oil changes out at his facility. Buildings and Grounds is doing some vehicle maintenance in their facilities. So we definitely have the ability to pull some of that together to create some efficiencies and cost savings, that we're working on it, so.
Thank you, and I know you're scheduled on the executive session for an update, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, thank you,
And Mr. Chair,
Commissioner.
yeah, part of that fleet management, and I brought it up a couple of times, but part of the fleet management discussion too is to get a handle on all the take-home vehicles in the county and how those are assigned and what is the policy for that.
Correct. We're working on that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something that was on top of mind. So anybody who has, any director who has people that are taking their vehicles home, I want to understand all the rationale behind that, so as we do the fleet management part of that. So,
And then also, I think it would make sense to have an additional fleet assigned to concourse out here. Now that we have a lot of different departments that are driving back and forth to different facilities on a very routine basis in their personal vehicles. So we're also looking at, do we have some vehicles that ordinarily would be traded in that might be lower value that we could make available now without a purchase to alleviate some of that burden on individual employees driving their personal vehicles. We're including that in part of the discussion.
right, perfect. I was just gonna say, include that in the discussion so we can have a debrief. And
So
maybe
we'll see what information Jordan has. I think it's a little bit older, so we'll get back in touch with each department head and elected official to make sure we have the updated information.
And so
we'll
you
discuss it.
have a group that is doing that. I just want to let the department heads know when you guys are requesting this information that it gets timely to you.
Correct.
So we're not dragging it out.
Yeah, Joe Miller and Davis Purcell and I are the ones that are working on it in conjunction with Jordan when he gets back.
Perfect. Thank you.
Chair, did we have any discussion from the department heads on anything that we have talked about?
Yeah, that's a good point. Does anybody want to come forward and have something that they want to clarify or some conversation that they want to have? So. Right.
Instead of going and sitting back down. I do think it would be really nice at the next meeting. I have some additional cuts that I want to make to the budget. It's a little bit clunky when we realize that right now with how this stuff is being put on the agenda, for knowing where to bring that forward, exactly what that looks like. But I would like to be able to maybe get direction if people know that there's cuts or changes, that we could get that to Jordan, and at the next meeting, maybe we could even have motions to,
Yes.
if we're gonna do 4%, let's do the 4%. I've got a couple of staff positions that I've talked about reducing out of the budget that hasn't been done. But I'd like to bring that to the next meeting so we could do a reset and we have time, because when we reduce the 4%, I have to go adjust revenues for some of our partner agencies. We didn't get time to do that last year because we did it on the 29th of September. But if we could do some of those motions, and if the commission would give direction, if we have changes that we want to make, that we can get that to Jordan to be considered to add motions at the next meeting. So we've got a kind of a clean slate going forward and we can piece it off.
I think that would be a perfect idea, Brian. I think get those to Jordan ahead of time, and then we'll put them on the agenda to make motions on.
I have a comment on that. So I do know, because again, I know this stuff comes up, but what I would like, when we say timely, that means get the information into the commission office so they have time, not the day before the commission meeting or a couple of days after the information is put out there, because it takes a lot of time to go back and make sure the numbers are correct and calculate those. So
absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Mr. Joe, you have the floor, sir.
I just had a couple things that I mentioned there when it came up the first time. I don't know if your intention is to utilize that 202 emergency disaster fund, I think is what it is. I know there was talks about it last year, and I touched on it during our budget hearing, to make up that 1.7 million out of our reserves. There is that piece, so if that's not the intention, we need to take that out of that 1.7, but the rest of it can stay. So.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner.
Yeah, Joe brought up a good point. I mean, it was discussed last year because that money is just sitting there and we're not putting money into that fund. And so it just needs to be zeroed out because we're not replenishing it. And so that would help on what would look like as cash supply.
Yeah, so that would come out of that 202 fund, and from my understanding that it was a snow levy or an emergency levy, I believe, that we levied a long time ago that we no longer actually levy. There's 206,000 or something like that in there. And we can use that money towards the purchase of our snowplow for next year, and snow removal and all of the other things that go around snow removal. So we can utilize that, and then the rest of that 1.7 is, again, that 1.25 for Box Elders agreement, and then out of our drainage reserves, you'll see a cost share agreement coming to you at next week's meeting with City of Rapid City for a new drainage basin design. The rest of that money is made up out of our drainage reserves that we've accumulated over the last several years to do a drainage study.
Which basin are they talking about?
So this one is going to be the Ennin and Morris drainage basin. It's a brand new one. So based, Reservoir east to Radar Hill Road, from the top of the hill there, kind of where Popple's new development is, the tiny homes, all the way south to Highway 44. So it's a brand new development.
That brings up our drainage commission thing. We need to follow up on that. Okay.
So that's what makes up that 1.7, but we'll get that money moved over to the 202 fund then.
Thank you, sir. Looks like Dustin had something to say. Hello, sir. Mr. Dustin. You have the floor.
Good morning, Commissioner. Dustin Willett, Pennington County Emergency Manager. Just looking for clarification on the 4% salary you'd set across the county. So I think last year that was applied to particular size departments. I'm just looking for clarification as I move forward budgeting. Is every department going to be looking at a 4%?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner.
I would say that we follow the same departments we did last year, but in addition to that 4%, because again, equalization couldn't handle, our planning department couldn't handle the 4% because just the size of their budget. And getting back to yours, you just added an FTE. So anyway, with the larger departments that have the 4% like we did last year, but in addition to what we did last year, go back and look, we didn't have time last year, like we would do this year, and look at fill rates in those departments. And I think across the county, we're averaging, over the last several years, about spending about 94% or so of our personnel budget. And then you can, but again, that's overall, but you can go back in some departments and they're going to be 98%, 100%, 101%. So that would be my thought. It's not a 4% across the county. It's the same as we followed last year.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
So you're safe.
Appreciate you bringing it up.
Thanks for the clarification.
And Dustin, while you're here, I know we've talked about it, on our board, but would you have a conversation about how you see the history of how your budget has typically been financed by revenue and the trickle down and the lack of those grant dollars that we're going to see more of applying cash to your fund because you're going to be operating more out of the general fund?
I think absolutely happy to talk to that. So historically for our office, our grant funding revenue passed through from the state, so federal grants that get passed through the state of South Dakota. That funding source has been very reliable historically. The department's operated for 30 plus years with a very solid grant funding source. Over the last couple of years, the timing on those grants and the certainty that those grants will remain there has been called into question. So that's what led us into having a unfilled position and some lower budget numbers because of the uncertainty of those grant dollars. To date, those grants have come through, although they continue to be less and less every year. So ultimately, I think that it is prudent to anticipate. If I was future casting revenue for emergency management, grant revenue for emergency management, I think that is not guaranteed or the solid base that it used to be. And I would certainly anticipate as those grants continue to decrease, and in the occasion when those grants are simply eliminated, then there either needs to be a drastic change of the emergency management office and mission, or the general funds of the city and the county get burdened with making up that shortfall in grant funding. So I will say to date, we have managed to not realize that additional burden to the general funds, but as Commissioner Durr pointed out, those grant fundings streams have been called into question. They've been significantly delayed. I think it's only prudent to expect that funding source may continue to dwindle and may go away. And this body and the city council would have to make some decisions about to what degree to continue to fund the office out of general fund.
But Mr. Dustin, I think it's very relevant and realistic that the department has to continue to get funded. So this conversation will definitely need to take place. So it's sometimes it's some of the most important things we look at with the least respect. So we need to change that around, just like we're having an ambulance conversation. It's something that the government or this county needs to be involved in, because if people had to just go out and protect themselves with emergency management, it wouldn't happen. People have to go out and buy ambulances, protect themselves, it wouldn't happen. So,
Commissioner Durr, did that answer the
Yes.
question?
all right.
Thank you.
Next person that comes up gets a 10% cut straight from
I didn't hear that. So, one thing I did want to ask was about capital projects. Exactly how I'm expected to build that into our budget for next year, especially if we're going to appropriate any of those bond dollars. We have the jail project. We don't know where that's going right now. We also surplused those operations buildings downtown, and I've gotten pretty much zero direction on, am I supposed to be working with those TIP developers with the land that they are donating to the county? Do you guys want me to start coming up with some concepts? I have looked at real estate, ideas as far as other land or existing facilities and things like that. Nothing really fits what the county needs at this point, but I can continue to look. But I really do need some direction on what exactly the expectation is to build sort of a budget for any bond appropriation that we may be using next year, and our new operations building. So that'd be what my request would be.
So, Mr. Davis, I know one time we had the conversation about combining with the city. I think that continue to need to have that conversation too, about what they're doing with their maintenance facility, because they're going forward with it for sure, no matter what. Sometimes when we rely on third parties, things get convoluted, but we're ready to move on from downtown. I think that, some of the meetings with Elevate and what they want to do with the Innovation District, which has been ongoing for 30 years plus. Don't want to be left holding the bag if we do need, I think it all fits into fleet management, it all fits in together, so.
I mean, if that's the direction we want to go, I certainly can. I have talked to Mike Tice, who's the sort of leading the project with the city as far as finding the land and the constructability site for what they want to do. They currently aren't really planning for us to be next to them or with them. It's not that we can't, I kind of want to preface that by saying, even if we do work with the city, we're not saving any dollars. We still have to build our own facility. We still have to potentially buy the land unless the city's going to donate it to us. So it kind of leaves us in the same bubble. But again, I don't need it today, but I need something along the lines of
mainly just knowing that we're going to need a facility.
Correct. But I need to, I don't have a budget for that. Again, I can work towards looking at concepts. Right now, the more I have discussions with departments, obviously the larger the project seems to get, depending upon what all we're trying to move into that facility. I understand we want to get rid of the Ziggy's building lease, that the sheriff's office has. You need our space. There's other things, there's radio techs, there's other people that live within the Harley building right now that also need office space and garage space. And so things just, it's gonna kind of snowball downhill until we can get it under control, so.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Roscoe.
So Davis, ideally, when you mentioned that you're gonna look, you need another facility. So I'm assuming you're looking at location, the size of the building, and the size of the lot that building's gonna have to be on. And then the utility services to that lot. Is there anything out there, I mean, can you just give us some kind of parameters, you know, in the perfect world, what you're looking for, so we just have an idea how big that building's gonna be, how big of a site you're gonna need, and where you would like it to be located, so that we just have some kind of an idea what you're looking for?
Sure, and, you know, I've had to kind of stomach the fact that, our operations most likely won't be downtown. It's beneficial for us to have our stuff downtown, so we're not having to trailer it all over or back down to our downtown campus. But it's very difficult to find land near or around downtown area, especially large enough to build a facility we want. But yeah, ideally 5 to 10 acres. That way we can expand. Ideally, the enclosed facility right now we're looking at 75,000 to 100,000 square feet. So it's large. But again, it would give us everything we would need, and then the ability to expand if necessary. And there's things we can do to cut costs on that. You know, we don't have to have the whole facility climate controlled and things like that. You know, there's things we can get really technical with it, but as long as we're within 5 to 10 minutes from the downtown campus, I think it works really well. And again, obviously I'm not smart enough to understand the TIF side of this, but with the donation of land that they're giving us, I think it's up to 9 acres, and I'm negotiating every piece of that. I want all the 9 acres. I think that location would suit us well, because, and again, this is a question for the commission and someone that understands it better than I do. Is there a way to finance some of the cost of that facility through the TIF, rather than us having to come up with all the cash up front? Because then we could build a facility that we could afford at the time and absolutely utilize. So that's where I'm at.
So you said 175,000 square feet?
No, 75 to 100.
75,000.
75 to 100.
So what did we say? Just say 75,000 and throw a number at it, $150 a square foot. Ballpark. 5 to 10 acres, it's probably gonna be light industrial, so that's gonna be $3 or $4 a square foot, so we can actually just put some numbers together that what we're really looking at. And I think that would help the commission, like.
And I do have a lot of that information. I'm just reluctant to bring anything forward without any clear direction. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be looking for land. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be looking for a building to purchase or where exactly we need to go, because again, I don't have a budget, though I know I should probably provide you guys with some numbers. I'm starting from ground zero. I don't know. I don't want to come forward and say this is what it's going to cost or potentially going to cost, and then we have, you know, it's $10 to $15 million, you know, and you guys kind of raise your eyebrows and go,
I was just looking at some rough numbers from what Commissioner Roscoe was saying, so we're looking right around 17 million. Land and building.
Yeah, well, depending upon if we're getting land donated to us from.
Yeah, I'm just, if we had to buy that land at $3.50 a foot up 10 acres.
And that's,
So, incorporate, I think we gotta have some sort of building design, like, at least a thought of how we're gonna handle all the sheriff's fleets, the mechanics. If they were all together, I think it synergizes everything for you. Fleet management and everything, so.
Yeah, the only thing we're sort of held, you know, if we do develop where the TIF is, we have to wait for that TIF to start
That's the
developing.
problem.
Because that Fifth Street corridor that they're expanding back into that land, that's where our land is being donated to us at. So again, that would take, we probably, I don't know, 2 to 4 years out, something like that, would be my guess.
Probably minimal. So that's why, it'd be nice to get out of downtown center, so it's something we need to consider.
I guess, where I'm at is that I hate to sell the location that we're in, even though it's not the ideal location, until we got a better plan on where it's gonna go in the future. Because,
I think that's what you're alluding to, right?
Yeah, we're not selling, I mean, we have surplus property. We are talking with developers and things like that.
Right.
We'll make sure in any sort of agreement we come to terms with that it favors the county and gives us ample time to find a new place to move to.
So we just, I mean, it just makes sense to do it with the timeframe, like Commissioner Ruskin said, is of the utmost. So I'm just thinking about moving on with our own idea and not having to wait 2 to 4 years if we don't have to. Yes, Commissioner.
This has nothing to do with Davis's, but we also are not, so people know we're not getting any revenue from that sales tax or anything in 27. So we don't get that till 28. So when people are thinking that that revenue is gonna come in, they're almost gonna double, remember, because you have to pay your taxes, plus they'll get the sales tax next year. And then we'll get the revenues for 28, hopefully, and know that total. So know that in 27, we're not getting any revenues from, if I'm correct, Kenner, from any of that till 28.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Davis.
Commissioner Durkin. Oh, Davis.
Mr. Chair. So yeah, getting back to capital projects and outside the buildings and building buildings, but just general maintenance and projects that we're doing. If you know that you have those, I would like to see, if you haven't, what that budget number is. And so if you know that we're doing things that, you know, you're not putting in the budget, whatever that's gonna be, and if it's 200,000, $500,000, whatever that number is, you know, even if it's an estimate, it should be in the budget, not that it would be something that we would come up in 27 and say, I knew I was gonna do this, and then we're just gonna supplement the budget, $500,000, whatever that number is. So I would like to see those, just like Joe does with highway projects. He has to kind of guesstimate what those are gonna be, and it can come in above or below. And the other thing, and it's a question, and it's been, one of the employees in the equalization office this morning mentioned that in their office, they had some heaving in the floor. And so there's part of the concrete in the floor that came up in the equalization office. And then over the weekend, it settled and went back down. And that the windows in there, based on the moisture, what the weather's doing, that there's been a gap in some of the window jams like that, and it will go out and then come back in, and the floor is up and down. Is that a known issue with this building?
It is, well, it is now that we moved into it, yes, and we are looking at the exterior window issue right now. We have a contractor looking into that for us. I don't have any answers for it yet, but I'll get back to you on it. So it is a known issue though.
All right. And the other thing that I've noticed, and you know, since we've been in here, particularly during this hot weather, is there seems to be inconsistency in the offices of the airflow, the heat and the cool.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I was just down in the planning office and this morning, and on one end of the office, it had to be like over 75 degrees on one end, and then some of the departments, more than one, talk about one office, it'll be, you know, we have people in some of the offices using a space heater while the air conditioning is running to stay warm, and other ones are, you know, the air conditioning is running and they would rather have a, you know, a portable air conditioner sitting by. And is that, are we having problems with our heating and cooling consistency as well?
Yes, because we are just now getting into our first season with it. It usually takes us some time to troubleshoot these things, but we are aware of it. We do have some main trunks like HVAC trunks that feed, for an example, there's a rooftop unit that feeds equalization, but then there's one run that also feeds Sabrina's office. She's not in equalization. We're gonna fix that. We're gonna take off, we'll take that trunk off and we'll move it on to a unit that is within the auditor's office to get better, more consistent airflow into her office, but also just like within their department. So we are aware of these issues, but again, this is the first time we're experiencing it, so.
And then again, yeah, moving in, and then I do know we've had some leakage on the roof, is that, I'm assuming?
Yes, the roof needs some attention. It's a difficult roof to determine where leaks are coming from because it is a ballasted roof. It is covered in rocks. So you have to sweep away the rocks, and then underneath the rocks is tar. And even if you have a crack over here, the leak could come over here because it runs down trusses, it runs down conduit, it runs down all sorts of things. So we are aware of it. We are patching where we can, and we are looking at including a roof replacement, periodically into our, capital projects.
Sorry. So yeah, I'm just kind of using this building as an example. We know that we have known issues once we identify it and that we have to work on it. We say it's going to be in 2027 that we try to budget for whatever work needs to be done.
Yep.
So.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. No, you're definitely getting a cut, Joe. This is like the second or third time you've been.
Third time's a charm, maybe.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I just wanted to discuss the 4% to our salary line items. Historically, going back, I think 5 years, we catch a time period where highway was, we had 2 or 3, 4 on openings pretty much the whole year. But if we look back the last 2 years, we've been fully staffed for the most part. We've got openings, but we fill them pretty much right away. So cutting 4% out of our personnel budget, it kind of scares me if we get a bad winter. Our overtime, I think right now, overall, our salaries, we're running it right at 50% or a little over. So I just want to have that discussion. If we're going to cut 50% out of our salaries line items, would it be allowable by you guys to use that somewhere else in our budget to make use of that revenue?
So you just, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
you just said cut 50%.
Yeah, it's
4%,
not-
sorry.
We're just talking about his
4%,
wage.
good lord.
So you want to cut 50, we're going to negotiate, say 4%.
We'll let you cut 50% out of your pay.
I think I would have some
So,
angry
yeah.
people.
So anyway,
We're just talking about you.
and I would look at the overtime, and again, I didn't, go in, I know it's in there, but
I've got it right here. So our overtime as of June 30th right now, we've utilized $12,400, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around the way that Tyler does that, because I like to look at the whole dollar number. So
right.
to figure out if that's actually shoved up into the overall line, I haven't figured out a way to make that work in my head. So
Right. But again, you should be pretty good on overtime because we had no snow this winter. So it's not like we had a lot of emergencies or anything for.
correct, and that's what scares me going into another season where
Right.
if we do have a bad winter, like say like 2019, we overran that overtime. We used to budget 130 hours per employee every year just for the off chance of 2019 or 2020.
That's why we're asking you to submit that to Ken or Jordan, so we understand where you're coming from, so.
And I do know going back, because we had this discussion that, just on one of those changes we made, that was $100,000 difference but historically, and that's why looking historically what's been utilized, and you try to come up with that average over the last 5 years. You can't plan for an emergency every year, but if we look at these line items and somebody's had an average of 55,000 expended over a 5-year average, yet the budget line item says I needed to be funded at 100,000. Those are the ones that I would look at and say, tell me why we can't take this back to the 5-year average and cut $45,000. So.
Correct. I would agree with that, and I would be okay with leaving our funding at its current level as far as salaries, but cutting in another 4% this year, I don't think would be a wise decision.
Put it on paper and get it to Jordan,
So we'll do that.
thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I would like the sheriff, I've got a question regarding the jail.
is he still here, Brian, or still here? I'm just gonna make a comment too for the directors and stuff. One of the things that we've been talking about a lot is these payouts that are out there when people retire or whatever. We have a contingent liability that's not on our books, which is, to me, beyond any thought process I could even think of, that we just owe people money, but we don't even know what it is. So I'd like to see the directors or whatever get those numbers nailed down and get them to Kenner and Jordan, so we know what these contingent liabilities are for people that are retiring or whatever, that have built up whatever it is. I'm not exactly sure if I got my arms around it completely, but that's something I'd like to have. So Brian, you have the floor.
Yes, sir.
Jerry, Commissioner Durham.
No, it's a question we talked, I know that we just approved grant submittal, and I guess, for the jail project, and so is there an anticipated timeline and when you might get a response back on that, or what does that time frame look
I
like?
haven't really laid out a timeline, but looking at how they've done the last couple of big similar grants, they've given out disbursement prior to the second round of submittals, and the second round of submittals to this grant, I think, are due the end of August. So I believe before the end of August, we'll hear whether ours was accepted, if so, what percentage. So I'm hoping in the next 3 to 4 weeks, we'll have a little bit of direction as to what they're looking at with that. But this was kind of a brand new one, and so I'm not 100% sure what that's gonna look like, but that's what they've done in the last couple.
All right, well, that's quicker than I thought.
Yeah, and I do believe that's nice, and that's why, although we weren't maybe 100% ready to submit that, it was a really short turnaround when that first notice came out. I felt it was very important we get in that first round of funding, because once word gets out, I was told there wasn't a lot, there's not a high level of requests in this first round. I don't know what that looks like, but if that's true, and they're truly wanting to give out $3 billion and we can get a chunk of this jail funding up front, I think it would give us, a real direction to move something forward a little bit quicker. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Commissioner Durr.
I do, and that input, I'd like to talk to the treasurer. A couple follow-up questions on previous discussions.
Ms. Annette, you're here.
Good morning, Commissioners. Annette Brandt, Pennington County Treasurer.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Say, I talked about this before, and I think in one of our previous budget discussions, I asked if you were on board with it, and we haven't talked since. And that was with the personnel in your office and some of the low-level positions that we advertise at, and then, you have a 30, 60, 90-day training cycle, and then you can move up to the next position and then another position. And you do have one of the higher turnover rates in the county. And so what I believe we might have been on the same page, and it's just a number for the board to look at, but that was maybe doing away with some of those lower entry-level positions and advertising at a higher rate, saying, basically, if you hire at this position, maybe it's a tax entitled specialist or whatever the position is, that you are just expected to do that job. And so anyway, and I believe you were in favor of that, and I think it was maybe getting some information to the commission office as to what those positions might look like. Are you still open to that discussion?
My understanding of that was that Jordan was going to look at what we had and do those calculations. Okay. I did do some on my own as well, because my concern was if there was any compression for what we have now. And so I figured that for the rest of 2026, I cannot pull that from the records of what I had, but I, for some reason, I had the forethought to take snapshots of just the ending dollar amounts, but right. So I do have it, I'll have to pull it off. But before the, for the 2026 budget, if I was to do that, because you had said maybe right. Even if we did it this year, that amount is about $60,000 to be added to my wage line items in order to make that work. Because it's only a portion, knowing that, and I figured that based on going forward from August forward, because knowing that it's going to take a little while for me to be able to activate it, I guess. I don't know what the correct wording is. And then again, sorry, I don't have all of the spreadsheets because I can't pull them off of there, but I did have the totals again. And in 2027, if I were to do that same thing with the same amount of employees that I have, the difference would be an additional $197,000 for the full year to do what you were asking to do. Can certainly look at both sides of it. My only concern is, again, I've continued to ask for additional employees to put more people in front of the customers. Not necessarily, I mean, this will, of course, help the staff that I have for retention, but it's still the same amount of people now paying them more money, but we still only have 8 hours a day to work with the public that's coming through. So I just want you to consider that as well. So yes, I have throwing around those amounts, and if I were to hire somebody at the higher, position, which my additional request, and Jordan was going to be working on those, was my understanding, it said any additional FTEs are gonna be handled by the commission for the dollar amount, so I didn't do those, but in years past I have, but if I did it the way, increasing that entry-level position, it looks like it's about $53,000 per employee that I would add, and that doesn't though include healthcare, because I wasn't sure how to add the healthcare.
All right.
We always used to do it as a, employee plus one, but
Yeah.
I didn't do that this time,
All
not
right.
knowing what we were gonna increase, so I would still stand by it. I would prefer to have additional employees, to have more people in front of the public to get those lines going faster, so, and still work on reducing those lower entry, positions coming in through attrition, just as people are leaving, getting everybody producing or, doing the transactions.
And getting back to, you just mentioned employee plus one, and I believe that's how the budgeting in Jordan's memo, I think he's got it, that's what we're currently budgeting, if an unknown, open FTE is an employee plus one.
Yeah, and I didn't do that because, again, I have the spreadsheets of where I did do it, but, I just have the total amounts, but I know the healthcare wasn't in that amount, so, that's what it would be if I started to do that. For the rest of this year, I would need an additional $60,000 for a 2026 budget, and then total for 2027, calculated as 197.
And the other talking point about, you saying what that additional dollar amount that you would need. So when we set the budget for 2026, the budget was set at, personnel, we cut those, that 4%. But anyway, we budgeted for a cost of living and a step increase, which came just over a tick over 4%. And so that's what we budgeted.
Yes.
And what we did not budget was these other promotions. Let's just say you can move, what you have, somebody in your department in a lower level position, and then you make an adjustment and you move them into, you've passed this test over here, so I'm going to put you into this position, and some of those raises have been $10,000 to $13,000. We have not budgeted for those, but it's still being done. And so anyway, that's still a talking point, because I know it's not fun when you have turnover and you train somebody and in 60 days or 90 days or whatever that number is, they're gone. So, and compression's a legitimate discussion which should be factored in if we look at that. So
Mr. Chair, I do budget for those because I can tell through past approximately how long it's going to take for somebody to go up to the next step, or if they're going to at all. And so the numbers that I initially always present to the commission do have those, like I'll budget in, this one's going to be at 3 months at this amount. That's what my spreadsheets look like.
But the county, we did
understand.
not do that.
Right.
We budgeted flat and just went with the COLA and the step increase.
So, Commissioner, I'm gonna chime in here, because one of the things we're trying to achieve is an overall customer service level in the Treasury Department. I think what Commissioner Durr is saying is your department has the highest turnover in the county, and he's trying to help you find an option that we all believe is somewhat realistic, and then even the playing field amongst your employees. And I think what he's looking for is quality versus quantity. I mean, if you're continually moving these people, it costs you way more dollar-wise to retrain these people. If we can find out something to stabilize that, so they're in there for a longer period of time, and there's less, from our perspective, it's a pretty straightforward job that, the timeframes and stuff that it's taken to train people, and then they're gone, is way more costly. If you just take 3 people and all in at $30 an hour, that's $190,000 for a year for 3 people. Just if you pay them $25 an hour plus benefits. So I think the approach he's trying to tell you, and I'm hoping that maybe Mr. Durr can lay it out on a spreadsheet or a flow chart for you to show you maybe how Minnehaha County's doing their flow chart on their people, and like we did with our HR, trying to simulate some of that and see if that makes more sense to help control, though, because you're an elected official, we don't control what you do in your office. We're just trying to look at it from our perspective to see what makes sense, and I think we all kind of, Commissioner Haddock.
So when you went to Sioux Falls, what I'm told is they train them and they're ready to go. They don't go through steps like you're going through. Did you learn anything from that that was different, that why they do that different than what you do is the bottom line?
Mr. Chair, yes,
Yes.
And our last 2 hires, we are trying that. We have them at the front window to start off with. I mean, it's gonna take time to switch that over. We have had, an employee from Minnehaha County come to Pennington County, and worked with us until they moved away, basically. And that's when we're really losing people, is they're leaving the area. So turnover, yes, is here, but it's not because they're leaving because they're upset with the situation.
But the bottom line is you're gonna train them to do the whole thing. You're not gonna do them in steps. You're gonna pay them more to learn all that training, is where we're going, if I'm correct. And then from there, they're ready to go. So pay for the training you need, pay for that more pay that you have to do instead of step them up from bottom line or bottom to medium to whatever on their quality and quantity of what they're learning. You wanna, and if I'm correct, that's what I heard, in Sioux Falls, they train them the whole thing. Anything to do with the treasurer's office, they learn. They don't go from a step to a step to a step to learning. They're learning it all. And I think that's what we're trying to say. We want them to learn it all, and we want to pay them more. So like Weichenbach and Deer said, we want that quality, not that quantity. And then paying them more for that reason is good. That's just like any business. If you're wanting that business to be, step 1, good to go right away, you're gonna have to pay more for that quality.
And I was on board with that. We talked about that last meeting when we had 2 open positions, and we have started that way. So our 2 staff we hired as full-time. We started training them right at the window as suggested, and Minnehaha does do that. They actually don't start them at the window because they're not by themselves at the window. They have a trainer that's there. But yes, we went in a little bit more in depth because we're understanding what they are actually doing.
But I'm saying take that whole group that you have in your office that's working in there, get somebody that's gonna be training those people in there, all of them, to do everything.
That's what that is what the difference is.
That's where we wanna go, sorry, missing it, not to interrupt you. And that's where we wanna go if we had to pay the 60,000 more or whatever, not to keep you stepping them from the bottom up. We wanna just level it out and like you said, we're not supposed to be telling you what to do, but it makes more sense, to hit the ground running and then also paying them more for what they learn. Sometimes you get bored anyway doing bottom up. Just me anyway, because I like to learn it all, and it makes it more interesting. So I think that's what we're trying to say. And if we're not working on putting more in there, right now we want to train everybody that's in there to do the quality and the quantity of all of it, and then see how that goes. And then if that's working and they're doing well, then that's when you add more staff. You don't have untrained and all that stuff and then add more to it. I think you're gonna cause yourself more issues than training what you have now and all of it, and then moving forward asking for more FTE. That's my opinion, not these guys'.
I appreciate that opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner Hancock.
I am.
Commissioner Durr, you
Oh,
have a
sorry.
question?
No, I'm just gonna say, no, you summed it up very well. So,
Thank you.
and my added point to that, so you mentioned in Minnehaha County that, they have a trainer, and I just want to make clarification, they do not. So those are actual, let's just call them deputy treasurers at the window doing their job. A new hire comes up and they shadow them, and then they make that switch. But that employee is getting, no additional pay or anything. It's just part of what they do, saying, monitor me, this is what we do. And that time frame can go from, 30 days to, 60, 90 days. And I guess that talking point, which we did, we have talked about, was Minnehaha County utilizes a steady staff of part-timers to come in and fill over those, throughout the week to make sure that they have, which is what I would like to see us get to. Minnehaha County, with less staff than we have, maintains 12 windows open throughout the entire business day, 365, unless there's some emergency. And so 365 minus the holidays and the weekends. But anyway, they maintain, if the window opens at 7 in the morning, it doesn't close, that individual goes on a break, somebody backfills that individual takes a break for lunch, somebody backfills that. The public doesn't see what's happening behind the scenes with the employees' time off or anything, because there's 12 facing public windows every day, unless there's some anomaly with staffing and some emergency. So part of the goal would be that, we would try to get to that. And I know that you're trying to work on some of that with some of the input from Minnehaha County, so.
Absolutely, and we have hired 2 staff, part-time, non-benefited, that will be trained to go have those windows open when our staff go to lunch, which currently now that window gets closed. So you're right, they'll be moved up front. They'll be working from 10 to 2. We'll see how that goes. So this is just a repeat of the last commission meeting that we talked about this on. It just takes time, you guys, and I also hiring somebody new in at that higher wage when we haven't talked about the compression costs for the staff that are there right now. If I've got to go ahead for that, then I have a go ahead to start those entry level positions being changed. So my concern is the staff that we have right now that are fully trained and are at those windows. We should be moving them up as well if that's how we're going to be moving them. And I agree with you. I want more money for my staff. All of us do. But at the same time, they're tired. There's enough work there for additional staff, and a lot of our staff, if you listen to them, of course, they're gonna want an increase in pay too. That's all across the county, everybody would. But right now, the workload is what is exhausting.
Commissioner Durr, you have another question?
No.
I just got one question. Is it realistic to have 12 windows open at a time? Minnehaha County's doing it. Can we do that? Can we get there?
If we open back up the phones, our phone is heavy. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that yet, where that is what we're working towards. When we moved to this building, that was the plan, was to have 12 windows open and 4 people on the phones as well. And that so that we could switch out people so that they were, being able to not be at the window the full time. So realistically, that's what I'm still shooting towards that for sure. We have 9 now. With the system being down, we were able to go forward and have one of our reception windows help as like a fast line. We're going to continue that when things are down, because that was always our goal. This just pushed us in that direction faster. And that is also one of our newer hires is at the window already within 90 days. So you'll see in the next couple of commission meetings, the incrementals still again.
I think, just from my position, I think everybody understands. I need to do whatever it can take. I'm tired of all the phone calls. And then Commissioner Hancock, go ahead.
So I didn't get the compression because if you're training people to be at the same level as the trained, they should be, that shouldn't cause you compression, because they should be trained at the same level by the time they're done to get the same amount of money. Am I correct? Because if you're saying you have to train them to get to where they are, where the other people are, it's the same amount of money, meaning you're gonna have to pay the difference on that to catch them up to where the other ones are. Don't get me wrong, if you have people that have tenure, and I get that part, that's not where you're pulling it up to. You gotta figure out a number when they're getting trained to that level, what they get. Should they surpass the other ones that are already trained? No, but there should be a level where, you know, they all should be, so you shouldn't.
And that's the calculations that I did. It is a compression issue, because if we have somebody that was hired in at the lower level, and then they, as they advanced, they're up to like 2212, and if you're suggesting that the entry level position be more at the $23 an hour, that's everybody moving up.
I
And
think
so
the
that
best thing
does
to
make a
do, you know, would be to
difference.
put it on paper
Yes.
and bring it to the
That'd be
commission
good.
office.
That way we can see it, send
We
it
can
to
all
us.
look at all the,
I-
where everybody's at, their timeframes, and where.
It's on
All
paper,
right,
it's
so,
on there,
thank
it's all
you.
ready to go.
And,
Thank
12
you, Ms.
windows
Smith.
would be a great goal, so let's make it happen.
Okay, so I'll stand for still asking for more, 4%, I guess, is 4%, but thank you.
I think we're gonna
appreciate
move
your
on
time.
now. I think we have, executive session unless anybody else has anything else. Commissioner Rossman.
I'd like the commission to give Davis direction. The reason I say this, I'm doing it for due diligence.
Right.
He gave us some numbers today, 75,000, 100 square foot building for the 5 acres. And we're just taking some rough estimates on what that would cost, but part of the due diligence, I would like Davis to reach out to a commercial realtor and have that, and give them the parameters that we're looking for a 50 to 125,000 square foot building on 5 to 10 acres. And put that in a spreadsheet and give us at the next meeting and break that down, what that is per square foot. And to give you an example, this building would have been part of that analysis because this building is 76,000 square feet on 10 acres. And we paid $92 a square foot for it, the land, the building, and some equipment. But I just would like to see what is available on the open market if that was a direction that we want to go. I think that, you know, an alternative to building new is seeing if something is out there that would fit. And we won't know that until we ask Davis.
I think that's a fair pursuit, and he's good with that, so you understood it, and then Commissioner Durr, you got a question?
Yeah. Davis, could you come back up and maybe the sheriff? So Davis, I saw you give a thumbs up, the sheriff gave a thumbs down. Nah, I'm just kidding. So,
Do we have a wrestling match?
Yeah.
Or what?
so anyway, my question is Ziggy's building. What is the square footage on that building?
I sent all the information to Davis, so he has it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I do have that
Check your
information, but
email.
it's
Oh
on-
wait, we don't have email.
It's, yeah, it's actually, it is on the shared drive that I don't have access to, so.
I guesstimate. So I'm gonna take that back, and so the Ziggy's building, the size of that building for what you're using it for, Brian, and then what you are you using part of it or not?
No.
Okay. So a building that size, would that work for our joint use or not?
It would. And I've had discussions with the owners of that facility about that, so. And I can come give you that information, but I just want to preface it by saying they asked a lot for it, but they've also put quite a bit of money into it. And some things that they were banking on were their current leases, which is ours. And then there's one next door. There's like 4 or 5 that they have total. That's roughly $600,000-700,000 in leases right now. And so that was also kind of added into their purchase price. And just to preface another thing, there's a current lease that occupies about 2/3 roughly of that facility. That has another 3 or 4 years on it.
All right.
So there definitely are some complications, but that, when we leased that, we did, tenant updates as part of our lease, and it's set up very well in that location, obviously, right across from the fairgrounds, and it's centrally pretty close to all of our operations, in between our operations. Is very good, and there's quite a bit of, not climate controlled dry storage out back that's not being utilized too, so I think it's a really good location and the right size, if we could get the price per we need.
And I will absolutely continue to explore that option.
Okay, as part of that discussion, yeah, could we get that information as well?
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we're getting some momentum here, guys. Okay, I know that there is an executive session planned, so.
Mr. Chair, I'm gonna make a motion to enter executive session pursuant to SDCL 125-26 for the purpose of discussing emergency management.
Second.
Have a motion from Durant, second from Hancock, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, so we're moving into executive session.